Hi, I'm Andrew Tsao. In this episode of Backstory, we're talking about Another Side of Peace, a documentary about a support group for bereaved Israeli and Palestinian families who have lost children in the ongoing conflict. The film follows one father's journey as he comes to terms with the death of his two sons and his efforts to reach reconciliation and promote peace. With us today is filmmaker Ellen Frick. Ellen, welcome to Backstory. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You know, before we get into the film itself, we should probably give our viewers a bit of history with you. You're a documentary filmmaker who does not shy away from controversial topics. Can you give us a little look into your background and how you came to the field of documentary filmmaking?
Yeah, I guess that's true. Both of my feature films are about teenagers dying in war. Mm-hmm. I have been at documentary filmmaking just around 12, 13 years. Mm-hmm. I had a career as a civil engineer, went to school here at the University of Washington, mm-hmm. and just had a complete turnaround and decided that I wanted to do something that I thought was more important.
And we were talking before we started taping, and you said you actually also took a certificate here in filmmaking as well.
Right, that's what I did. There was I think it was a 9-month class, mm-hmm. a night class. Mm-hmm. And that's in fact where I met my partner and editor in filming, Gretchen Berger, who couldn't be here today.
That's fantastic. So both from the University of Washington, civil engineering and your new career.
Right, she had gone through the class a couple years before me. And actually you'll find a lot of filmmakers, documentary filmmakers around Seattle who'd gone through that class because there really isn't a formal program.
So when you realized this was your next calling, if you will, I mean, the field is wide open, but let's talk a little bit about the subject matters that attracted Ellen Frick, the filmmaker.
Well, I'll tell you, I was attracted to Another Side Peace, mm-hmm. Because at the time that I made it, which was probably about 10 years ago now, and mm-hmm. It's unfortunately very relevant still.
Yeah.
You read in the newspaper only about the radical groups on each end. Mm-hmm. You know, the Arabs killing the Jews and the Jews killing the Arabs. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, I had been to Israel and had some cousins who lived there. Yeah. And often went and visited their Arab friends and had dinner, and vice versa, went to Bethlehem. And so I knew there's some nice people there. There's got to be some stories where people are really trying, you know, and they're not the people that are in the news, which right. to me are this is the point of documentary filmmaking, is to bring things that aren't necessarily up front and center in the news. So I went and found the story, basically.
You were introduced to this, I mean, at that point, our viewers will see it in the film, but at that point, did the organization already exist between the families?
Yes, it had been, it had existed for probably 4 or 5 years.
And how did you find out about them?
Somebody's friend's mm-hmm. mother is a famous singer in Israel, mm-hmm. I can't remember her name, and told us about this group called the Parent Circle, and I called them just to find out about it, and it turned out that the person I was talking to started telling his own story. And I won't tell you too much of the story mm-hmm. because there's a little bean spilling to part of it, but it was just such an amazing story. We said, "Hey, Ronnie, can we make this about you?" And he said sure. And so that's how it was a very well planned shoot. We shot the entire film in 2 weeks over there.
So one of the things I'm going to speculate about documentary, as opposed to when one writes a script and tells a story with actors and controls the outcome of it, that when one enters into a world like this, one may have a plan, but one is there to capture life as it happens. What happened when you were on the ground that changed the way you saw the film itself?
I think it was... So essentially your question is what surprises did we...
Yeah.
And in a way, you know, the disappointment was that there weren't very many surprises because we had planned the film so well and knew it. But once we got over there, well, first of all, when I did go on a preliminary sort of reconnaissance trip, and I was just right across the street in a farmer's market of a suicide bombing where 3 were killed. And all these people I'd met in Israel had never been anywhere near a suicide bombing, so that was unusual. But when we went into the West Bank, it surprised me, first of all, how easy it was to get in there at the time. We had some
We actually
cabs.
will see a border crossing.
Yeah, we had some cabs
Yeah.
waiting for us, and the cab drivers came up, climbed a little ditch into Israel, grabbed the light kit, went back down into the Palestinian territories, loaded the cab. So we were just pulled over by the side of the road. And I understand those kind of areas have changed.
Okay.
And just how friendly the families were, giving us huge meals where food was really pretty scarce over there.
Now, as an American, though, did you sense, did you have to navigate trust in a way that might have been different from either side, let's say? I mean, you told me that you contacted Ronnie first about this situation, and obviously the group you are dealing with is amenable to this notion. It's part of their principles. But as we also will see in the film, they're not, they're not the rank and file opinion of this. And so being on the ground as an American with a camera in the Middle East, I'm sure that draws a lot of attention and maybe some opinions from people.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the thing about the group called the Parent Circle is they do speak out about reconciliation and peace, but really they truly are at the core a support group, much like a cancer support group, and they go around and tell their stories. My son was at this bus station and this is what happened. And so we did have a little privacy issues, people who wanted to be on camera or didn't. We had one couple whose son had just died 2 weeks before, and they came to their first meeting, and we had visited their house a few days before our big shooting at the support. It was sort of a convention, and then they broke up into little groups, and they spoke to us. But there were plenty of people who we're just basically camera shy. I don't think within the Parent Circle we ran into people who were like, Americans shouldn't be here. But certainly in Israel in general, we sort of joked about wearing Canadian T-shirts.
Really?
In the United States at the time, it's very, very unpopular. And over there.
And what about I'm just kind of curious about the sort of logistical legalities of declaring, hey, I'm a documentary filmmaker, I'm coming to Israel and I want to go into the West Bank and I want to go back and forth. What does that entail? I mean, who do you contact? How do you, what kind of permits do you get to? I mean, it's not like you're going down to the Pike Place Market and doing a documentary, Here, you're dealing with sensitive international issues. What was that process like? Well,
first of all, documentary filmmakers were not allowed into the Palestinian territories.
So is this an actual stated policy?
It was at the time, documentary filmmakers. I can't imagine. We were one of the first documentary films of the conflict. But we basically got a letter from the Jim Lehrer show saying we were a news crew. And used that to get the permits. But as it turned out, we didn't need any permits. We just went to this ditch and...
Wait. So the differentiation at that time was no documentary filmmakers, but news had access. And the news access sort of let everyone sort of let their guard down. And once you were there, you had free reign to move about?
Well, I'll tell you, nobody told me as the director that we were just going to sneak in. I brought everybody to the correct office.
Right.
We had our permits. Everybody had anything we could hang around our necks, we did.
Yes.
Even our pass keys to the, TV studios
of
over
course,
here.
Yeah.
And so nobody really told me because I would have, had some issues with it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to break my word, but we already really had, we were really posing as a news crew, getting this letter from the Jim Lehrer report, and I'm not really sure why they gave that to us.
Well, but then the actual moving back and forth wasn't even about going through, like we would think, coming into an airport now, customs, TSA. You're literally talking about once you got there, as you parked on the side of the road, the Palestinian team came up, took your stuff, and you just went on?
They were a big help with unloading the van. Yeah.
That does say something about the difference between the lives of the people on the ground and, I guess, the reality that authority has to be in control of.
Exactly, and I don't know, the wall was just being built, the wall between the Palestinian territories and Israel at the time.
Yes.
And I don't know, the status of, as I said, the boundaries are much less porous. But on the other hand, you're at a checkpoint, and you'll see there's many, mostly the religious Jews that are living in these outposts.
Yes.
And you go through a checkpoint, and there are these girls waiting for their bus.
Yeah.
It's really incongruous. It's like there's all these different players. And so they go over the border every day through a checkpoint, while somebody maybe with a sick baby trying to get into Israel is going to wait in line. And some documentary crew posing as a news crew is going to, climb a ditch.
Were you ever pressured, or did you feel pressured? I guess one of the things that's always interesting for me to ask about documentary filmmakers is about the notion of objectivity. You're going into a volatile situation where passions run very high and opinions are very set. And I watched your film and I thought, wow, she looked at this in a way that really broadened the view of the entire situation and actually gave some credence to the phrase fair and balanced, which is kind of become a comic phrase in America now. Did you feel pressured in any ways while you're making the film to maintain that, and how did you deal with that?
Well, in making the film, our reactions to the film were similar, and thank you very much. That wow, these are people too. They have refrigerators, they have belly buttons. Even though they live, they're not scary, Arabs, or they're not, killing Jews.
Right.
So that was, the first point, is that we wanted to show these people as people. We did have a couple. I had sort of an unusual. We had. 20% of the film is in foreign language that I don't speak.
Right.
That was my very first feature film. So we had people transcribing, and then we had to bring in other people to place the subtitles, because it's not enough just to to run them through. And I had at least one Arab man, who took a volunteer job to transcribe just to cause trouble. And that's what he said, just to
cause trouble for who?
For the film. He didn't think the film should be made. He hated
the notion of reconciliation.
The Jews, and he was just there. And so he would be arguing about the translation, and we would have these.
He openly told you this while he's doing it?
Well, eventually I said to him, Majid.
Like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this?
Majid, what are you doing here? Finally, and he said, well, I really thought I could fight this from the inside. It was sort of a.
Did he stay on?
Oh no,
Yeah. He finally went out. That's amazing.
Right, and we did bring our main Palestinian character, Ghazi Bergith. We brought him to Seattle. I tell you, we shot it in 2 weeks, but we did bring him to Seattle. His first time in the United States ever, and his interviews, his sit-down interviews, are over here.
Okay.
And that was really interesting to see him here. Yeah. And on
the other side of the world.
Well, I kissed him goodnight, and he said, "Oh, Ellen, we don't do that."
Yeah, we don't do that.
But that didn't stop him from grabbing a beer.
No, of course. Now here's a look at the trailer for Another Side of Peace.
Both sides do very bad things. It's all blood, and pain and sorrow.
An
Israeli missile strike finds its mark.
I'm the son of a Holocaust survivor. I have nowhere else to go.
I'm gonna be back. If not, my son will come. We'll never forgive you.
So I won't forgive. I'm not forgiving the world. I don't forgive Lord. I don't forgive the Arabs. I don't forgive them. I forgive them when they give me my son back. But I can try to reach reconciliation, because this is the way to stop the conflict.
Here we are. Welcome.
welcome.
رغم ان يعني قلبي محروق وزعلان على ابني، كان بس يصير تفجيرات يعني في اسرائيل ويصيروا ينقلوا في الاطفال وفي هذا، كنت ابكي يعني كان ابني، وهذا يعني زي ما انا حاب اعيش لازم غيري يعيش.
Next weekend, we are gathering together. Families will be Palestinians and Israeli in Jerusalem. Then you meet bereaved families like me.
Why we came here today to raise our voices, to call for peace.
We need the people first of all to talk, to get out the anger, the frighten, to know that on the other side there is a voice of peace.
In spite of the difficulties that we face, that we came today from the West Bank until we are right now here. In spite of this, we cross over the difficulties and we came to shake hands and to know you and to know each other more closer.
Making the peace, it's not something like a Polaroid picture. It's kind of embroidery. And I make one stitch, 2 stitches, and the other one make 2 stitches. Then afterwards it become a picture. This is the piece.
In the film we just saw, English actually becomes a kind of conduit between Hebrew and Arabic. But there's more than English as a way for the two cultures to interact. And it's wonderfully shown in the film how people connected beyond the barriers of language. Music, food, sharing grief, of course, sharing a common sense of loss. It seems like there are so many ways beyond the barriers that everyday people have found to connect with each other. And I'm sure that was something you saw when you were there on the ground. Why is it people can do this and not governments?
You know, that's actually one of their taglines, is if we, as Israelis and Palestinians who have paid the highest price possible, can talk to each other, why can't our leaders do the same? And I don't have an answer to that question. I don't know, maybe in the back room between at coffee breaks at these high-level meetings, you know, there is a little bit of conversation.
Well, maybe they should have a meal together.
So I think
it sounds simplistic, but if you think about it,
well, go to each other's house and have a meal.
Have a meeting in each other's
with no
home.
cameras and no.
You go there and make the film, and we got a glimpse in the film of some of the resistance they face as a group in their grief. I mean, these are people who suffer massive personal loss. While they're trying to reconcile and deal with their massive loss, they're also being, in a way, shunned by their own communities. How do they cope with that? I mean, I saw a little of it in the film and I saw some of the other opinions, but you know, they're still there living with this, yet this circle goes on. What are some of the ways, did they ever talk to you about what they do in day-to-day? I mean, you know, they go to the market, they know these people, and these opinions are so set.
Yeah, they do have a difficult time with being threatened as much as death threats. From their own people. But they're also they're out in public a lot. You know, maybe in the square in Tel Aviv, the big square.
Okay.
And one thing that really sticks out in my mind, one of our more minor character's name, Rami El-Hanan, had lost his daughter in a bombing in Jerusalem, and somebody came up to him and said something like, "I wish you had died with your daughter," because he was so angry that these people could be talking to
their enemies.
To the enemies. That was about the worst one I ever heard. There have been our Israeli main character, Ghazi Brigith, has been picked up for questioning and accused of collaboration with the Jews by both the Palestinian Authority and by the Hamas. And we did, actually, when you asked me earlier about surprises we incurred, we did, I had my little camera out, and when we were going up the stairs to meet with the family, the Palestinian family, I would sort of, there was these people at a market, or at a store, and I said, do you mind if I, take your picture? And they said, no, and Ghazi got very nervous and pulled me away, and it turned out that they were leaders of the Hamas in the community where we were.
So would something like this also happen to some of the Jewish people from the Israeli side? Were there instances where they were called in by the authorities and, as you said, accused of collaborating?
Not that I know of. The only one thing that happened is we were shooting at the bus station in Tel Aviv. There's a huge bus station, and we had our fixer, our sort of translator person, got asked to go to the office, and sort of on the way to the office, we grabbed the tape out of the camera and put another tape in the camera.
Just in case.
The camera never made it into the office, but we put a blank tape into the camera. That's pretty common practice.
So, tell us again. This was done about 10 years ago, and obviously, I think you continue to follow up on what's going on over there.
Yes.
Where are they now? Some of the people you built relationships with, friendships with, in the light of what has happened historically in the last 10 years.
Well, Ronnie Hirschenzone actually has divorced his wife. They were having serious marital problems during the shoot. In fact, she had promised to be in the movie, and she wasn't. Okay. I thought, oh, this is going to be glaring. We don't see his family. He's divorced his wife, and Ghazi Brigith himself was picked up for questioning by the Palestinian Authority and by Hamas, and he's not living there anymore. And he has ended up divorcing his family as well. And you do see his family in the film. So not very happy aftermath.
No.
Not due to the film at all.
But the pressures,
but the fact that they got involved.
of what was going on and what is going on. And before we watched the film, you had said, we made the film before the wall was being constructed. I mean, we're entering a time in history now where it's almost done. And we're also shooting this show at a time when it appears that the issue of the settlements is almost a non-starter when it comes to any kind of negotiated settlement, in that Israel is basically saying, we're not going to talk about settlements in the West Bank. They're there. They will continue to grow. This is a fact of life. What do you think that bodes for the future in any kind of negotiated settlement? Being that one of the core elements of any kind of real lasting peace is this idea of land swaps and settlements.
I don't think it bodes well at all. I think Israel's main impetus for sitting down at all was their own safety. And I think it's pretty safe there now.
In other words, the
from
policies
what I've heard.
have...
But also you don't hear so much in the news about that, because at the time that was the big war going on, and now it's everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, we're in Iraq and Afghanistan. And,
right.
But I don't think, but these people are suffering in the Palestinian territories. They can't necessarily go from home to school without a real circuitous route, because there's barriers within the Palestinian territories, usually around settlements or for various reasons.
So because of the way the settlements are set up, the issue of access within the territory itself becomes now problematic.
Right.
Rather than, it used to be the issue of crossing over for work into Israel, but you're saying now it's actually even movement within
yeah, and and I've heard that. I haven't really experienced it. Well, we experienced a little bit. The main highway was closed but while we were there, so we took, a 5-minute ride took us 20 minutes, on the...
Because you had to do all these circuitous routes.
I assume now it's worse, but I haven't kept up so much on that. I know it's bad. I know, just food supply is still a real issue. Youth with no future. It's a really bad situation. And,
well, you, as we started out this interview talking about your background, I mentioned that you don't shy away from controversial topics as a filmmaker. And let's talk about your future now. We were chatting before we started to tape about another piece that you have been working on and completed that is centered in America that also has to deal with a very polarizing topic. Can you give us a brief look into that story?
Oh, sure. The film is called Patriot Guard Riders, and I made this film again with my same editor partner, Gretchen Berger, that worked on Another Side of Peace. And it's about a huge group of motorcyclists, and huge 250,000 last time we counted. So every area of the United States, and they attend military funerals.
Right.
And they originally started because there's a hate group. We call them the God Hates Fags group. They're the Westboro Baptist Church family of civil rights attorneys.
Yes.
And they started attending military funerals and screaming,
that's been
epithets in people's faces. And so these bikers, this group of 10 bikers, got in the way, and were trying to protect the family. So
it just started with 10 of them?
Yeah, about 10. And it's only 6 years old, this organization, and it's amazingly organized.
So 6 years ago, 10 of them just decided on their own, we should do something to intervene because this isn't right.
Right. It was like the American Legion combat vets somewhere in the South.
Okay.
And so then it took off, and it's almost this sort of military structure. There's state captains and road captains and regional captains. And so I worked with them to make the film.
I see.
Because at first I thought, this is an interesting thing, what I've just told you, but that's not a movie, as filmmakers. Yeah. But then I started talking to these bikers and found out that a majority of them are veterans and Vietnam veterans, and there's a lot of issues that they're working out by being in the Patriot Guard Riders. Camaraderie.
Yes.
Working out, some PTSD type issues in sort of this weird way by going to funerals. And it's and so we have some amazing stories that we caught in the film. A family who just lost their son in Iraq, and a guy who just never made it too high in the Marines, and is now a big assistant ride captain, and then a very, very intelligent man in Portland who was very anti-war. He was a leader in Vietnam Vets Against the War, and now he's a leader in Patriot Guard Riders. And one of the first questions I asked him was, Nick, what are you doing walking around carrying these American flags? I mean, that wouldn't be... And basically he said, never again will anybody come home the way we came home, to animosity. Yeah. And as long as veterans are dying, the Patriot Guard Riders will be there, because the group has grown to not just do the killed in action funerals that are happening now, but any veteran that requires any veteran's family
assistance.
They have an honor guard, and I was going to call the film originally Harley Honor Guard, but there's too many Suzukis and Hondas. They wouldn't let me do that.
Let me ask you this: when you met them, I'm curious, did you show them Another Side of Peace?
I did to the board of directors.
I want to know what the response was.
Well, basically, the purpose was to show one that
you knew how to make a documentary.
That I knew how to make a film.
But I'm very intrigued when they watch this film about reconciliation and loss and war, and here are these. They're right in that crucible of highly conflicted feelings about it. What was their response?
Yeah, much like other people, but maybe more so. Like, wow, there's those Palestinians are people too.
Amazing. Amazing.
But I don't think that they made the connection so much, except for you're in the Middle East. But they found them interesting, and basically it got my stamp of approval that I could go ahead and make the film. And it was difficult getting permission to shoot the film. Not difficult, but I always asked the families, or had them ask the families, who's it's the funeral of their son or daughter, or husband or wife, and then sometimes I would just be shooting the bikers at a funeral. But one time, a family came up to us and represented the family and said, "Hey, can we have the tape later?" So I took that as tacit permission to shoot them, and it's a very moving scene of a family going into a basically experiencing a service for their dad, his 3 little boys.
I think it's what I hope our viewers are getting is the power of true to life storytelling through documentary has value and impact beyond the simple documentation of what's happening. I mean, this notion of connecting. I'm absolutely fascinated of the board of directors of this biker gang watching another side of peace about bereaved families in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict reconciling, and through that going, we trust you to make a film about us. It's truly a testimony to the power of film in that way. Ellen, I want to thank you for being here on Backstory. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks you.
And thank you for watching Backstory. I'm Andrew Tsao, and I will see you again behind the scenes.